We're live.
Okay, it is 8 o'clock. Call the meeting to order. We'll call ourselves in.
Bert here. Corey here.
Kalia here.
Woodford here. The mission of the Shenango County IDA is the mission of Shenango County Industrial Development Agency to advance the health, prosperity, and welfare of the county citizens by helping to retain, create, and attract businesses through appropriate investments in the Senate. First order of business, approval of minutes, June 18th, 2025.
Make a motion.
Mr. Burton moves.
Corey seconds.
Mr. Corey seconds. Any additions, corrections, deletions? Hearing none. We'll vote.
Bert, aye. Corey, aye.
Kalia, aye.
Woodford, aye. Carries. Financial report, June 30, 2025. John.
Thank you. So we're going to be on page 6 there, looking at the statement of financial position. Starting off with the assets, you'll see an increase of close to $100,000 in our checking account. That's good news. We got a payment from Highbridge, $94,233. We also got a payment of Norwood Solar for their annual fees, and also Norwood Shenango Solar. So we had a good month of getting that in, so you can see there. Intra-fi just went up a little bit due to our normal interest and investments there. The rest of the numbers on here are pretty much the same as last month. I checked, they're all pretty static there. We're going to be going through the payables in a minute. Total fund balance of just under $3 million. Last month that was like $3,012,000, so just a little reduction there. But any questions on that?
Any questions for John?
Okay, we'll head over to page 7. So one of the things I wanted to note is when we get a payment in from Highbridge, because we have taken all the revenue, recognized it earlier, when those payments come in, we're never going to see that as a revenue again. So this is going to come in and just reduce the accounts receivable. So you're going to start seeing that accounts receivable go down. The other thing I'm going to be checking this next month, I didn't get a chance before it went out, is the bucket solar to see if that's going to be handled the same. So we're working with the auditors, making sure that's the same. When I get that annual payment, should that be going against accounts receivable only if we've already recognized the revenue. Otherwise, we may have recognized revenue for that. Maybe we should. I'm going to check on that. You can see everything's kind of cleaned up a little bit there. You good there? Okay, page 8, payables, really quiet. A lot of maintenance and small people bill. Heading on into page 9. We got a rent in, interest income. We're looking at expenditures. Our contract service, that's just kind of our payroll every year. We get asked about 2 signatures, that's one of them there. Our insurance was our public officials, coverage. That's what that is for the month there, the 2021. We're gonna flip to page 10. We did pay the taxes on the 5 Walnut Street there. And the other utilities and maintenance are fairly consistent with what we normally do. The maintenance is up a little bit this month because we have a quarterly HVAC maintenance contract that they put out. So overall, net 15. Again, there any questions on anything, any of the notes or anything for anyone?
The East Main Street rent, I see the actual is nothing, but the budget's $13.99.
Yeah, so what happened there is I didn't have time to, I went on vacation. So typically what we do is we do intercompany transfers, and the IDA, who owns the building, would charge rent to other entities for revenue, and that just got processed yesterday. So what these are missing are the intercompany transfers right now for the month of June. So just be told.
It's a good question. You just haven't had time to do.
Yeah, you'll see it. It'll be next month. In fact, if I reran this morning, you would show it. I just, yeah, it's a great question though. And those are the things we should be paying attention to. So, yeah, good question.
Okay, any other questions for John? Items 3 and 4 on the agenda or excuse me, 4 and 5 on the agenda. Now entertain a motion to approve 4 and 5.
I'll make a motion.
Eno moves.
Second.
Mr. Burton seconds. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote.
Burton.
Corey, aye.
Zeno, I.
Kalia, aye.
Woodford, aye. Carries. Pilot updates. Tyler.
Okay, first one there on the list is the lifelong agriculture. We had talked a little bit about them last month. Going back to that applicant requesting some additional information and just trying to clean up that application a little bit. Fortunately, he was out of town for a while, so we played a lot of phone tag, and I didn't really get to touch base with him until about 4 o'clock yesterday, so I don't have an updated application to share with you, but I do have some additional information that I wanted to share. I just passed out this morning. I had done a cost benefit analysis of that property and project, which is this sheet right here, which just kind of just shows you what kind of numbers we're talking about at the very least. This has been shared with him. We get the new assessment value that puts it at $719,800, and then we have the taxes distributed there. You have the total pilot coming at just under $360. So any questions I can answer on that, happy to do so. This is just our standard pilot following our UTEP policy for 10 years based on a manufacturing processing plant.
I think this is really a nice piece of work for those of you, because when we have our public hearings and we have questions around these pilots, when we sit with municipalities, when we sit with town supervisors, very often they compare what the taxes could be without a pilot, which would be the $719,000 to the $359 that they will be collecting. What we really should be talking about is the $359 versus the $98,000 without the pilot. Because without the pilot, they would be going elsewhere for this project. So I think that's the point of comparison that helps us understand why. And then after that, $71,000 a year in perpetuity makes a lot more sense than 9.8 in perpetuity. So this is a good document to hand out when we have our public hearings or any other questions.
So we're not at a point, obviously, to take any action with this one yet. Hope to come back next month with a cleaned-up application, and I'll have all that bundled up together. But I wanted to at least share the numbers now, just so we had some time to look at them and sit on them. So more forthcoming with them.
Excuse me, I know Phil A.C. is the mayor of Sherburne. Is there a town supervisor of Sherburne?
There is a town supervisor of Sherburne. I have reached out to him a couple times just to ask if he has any sort of correspondence with them or thoughts, and I haven't been able to get with him.
I know him, I'll call him. I know Charlie.
Yeah, that's
So
just like to have their buy-in
I'll call him.
prior
Yep.
to making any decisions. School district as well.
Yep, we'll do that due diligence this next month, and yep.
Yep, nice.
Any questions on that one?
Yeah, and again, I think Bobby raised good points, right? It's not our role, it's the town's role to be able to approve. We're only approving the taxing situation for that entity, not whether or not this is a good project for the town should. That's what we're here to talk.
All right, I'll move down the list here. Next one is the Norbit Solar Farms, Norwich Sites 1 and 2. That one has been sitting with the attorneys now for quite some time. They're still kind of going back and forth on some language in the closing documents. I don't have a better update from last month, unfortunately, for this month based on that. Hoping to get that cleared up here relatively soon. Payne Solar, I have talked to them since our last meeting. As you know, they had to meet with NICEAG to discuss their interconnection costs and how that would work with NICEAG on their site. They have done that. They have the figures. They are comfortable with the figures. They now just need to, their plan is to submit a new application with updated construction costs. I'm just waiting for that document. They did tell me they would have it for me for the August meeting, but they also told me that last month for the July meeting. So we'll see. Hopefully we'll keep pushing them along here so we can get that taken care of.
So if the amount of taxes they're paying increases, we don't need to go back to public hearing, or do we?
So if we do not, per our attorneys, we do not need to go back to public hearing if they change the cost figures in their application, because we haven't closed yet and it'd still be above that same figure dollar amount. So we should.
So it's about the 100,000
Yep,
regardless?
yes,
Okay.
yep. So we don't need to go through that whole process again.
Okay, good, thank you.
I
if I could interrupt just for a second. We have Sean McGrath here from the Evening Sun. Sean, is there more agendas on the end of the table so that Sean has something to go by?
Thanks, sir.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, the last one on the list, Principal Holdings Group, that is the hotel here in downtown Norwich. They are anticipating to close both on the pilot and the building itself within 45 days. That was as of last week. So things are progressing there. They have a groundbreaking date to start construction, so things are moving along and they are hot to trot. So I'm anticipating hopefully we close on that relatively soon for both the pilot and the building.
Sounds good.
Any questions on any of those?
Any questions on the pilot updates from Tyler? Okay, new business.
I would talk about the required ABO training, so we don't have to spend too much time on that. Taylor, if you do want to do that and go to Ithaca, please, I encourage you. If anybody else needs that training and you want to take it online, John will send that to you shortly, okay? I don't want to have two Restore New York grants. I'm going to go in a little bit of reverse order because we're going to take more time talking about the 2025 grant than we are the New York Forward application and probably the New Market Group as well. So I'll get to both of those before I go back to the 2025 grant. When we put this agenda together, we didn't have as much information as we do right now. The New York Forward application, you'll remember, was one we talked about with the 5 walkable downtowns, Oxford Green, New Berlin, Bainbridge, and Sherburne, about potentially pursuing a New York Forward grant. Tyler got them together as part of our meeting with our Summit of Mayors, and they were more interested in applying for the grant than they were trying to do consultant work around what would be the best application of the grant. They were also concerned about the match, and I thought the match was frankly less than what it is. It's a 50-50 match, not a 10% match. So frankly, with the response that we got and the work that we need to do, we're not going to apply for that New York Forward grant. I think it's premature, and I think even if we got it, we'd run into execution issues in Oxford and in Sherburne because we're not ready with projects that are shovel ready, with developers that are ready to go, with financial resources. We still need to develop those projects. And we have a $200,000 strategic planning grant that we will be employing to try to figure out what's the appropriate economic development strategy for the county. And then individually, how does each community fit within that? Some of this work will lead to that. So let's do that work first before we start to apply for additional grants on top of that. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay.
One step at a time.
Say it again?
One step at a time.
One step at a time. The one thing that we do want to talk about, and I'll take some time on it now, is the 2025 grant. Tyler met with the representatives from the Department of Empire State Development Group. And this is a lot different than some of the other DRI grants. We are ready to go on this. They essentially have said, you can start the process now. There's one piece of work that Tyler is in the process of doing, which is to take the engineering specifications that you see here for the Early Learning Center. And remember, we predicted $1.1 million to build the Learning Center and $300,000 to do the work we needed for the chamber, about $1.4 million. 10% match for that $1 million grant was coming from the IDA. That's what we proposed as part of this. And so we want to verify that 1.1 million is still a valid number. And we need to make sure what percentages of that need to be assigned to specific groups, women-owned, minority-owned businesses. They're going to go through that process. It'll take about a month. The O'Reillys are going through the process of verifying the drawings. Concurrently, our partner in the daycare, the place, Sharon Vesley, is going through the process of verifying with the state that it meets all the criteria for the daycare centers that are going to be required for a licensing standpoint. And we think that it will. We've set ourselves up to be able to. We think that's just a matter of going through the process. Once we've done all of that, we'll conduct an RFP for a general contractor. And so we'll hire that general contractor to do this work. They want this work, they being New York State, they want this center open by the fall of next year. So it's a pretty aggressive timeline. we think about the other grants we've got right now, we're 2 years into the DRI, we don't have a single one of the major projects completed. So, I mean, this is a very aggressive timeline. So Brian, there's a lot of things for us to figure out. All of this is a reimbursement grant. How do we finance the $1.4 million? How are we gonna go about selecting the general contractor? How do we verify and assure that the daycare provider we've selected has a business plan that will be supportable and sustainable as our tenant for $1 a year, right? There's just a lot of work to do. And so I recommend that we put a build team together. And that build team will bring in other people. And again, I propose this to RC. I'm certainly open to input from the board. But I think obviously you want RC on that board, and Tyler and myself, we need somebody like John, because tracking the John Axtell, tracking the financial aspects to turn in all the receipts that are not, the biggest burden of this will fall on our organization. I think that Timmy Miller should be part of that from the city, Eric Scribner, and Sharon Vesley from the place, 7 people. Now, that does not mean we're not gonna bring in bankers and try to figure out how to finance that thing. I'm open though to adding anybody else to this board, that group, that we think, or replacing myself or anyone else on that group that we think should be replaced if we wanna keep it small. I'm open to any of them, but I'm not really open, that's a lie, because I definitely wanna be on that group, because this is very important to us. So, but I'm open to adding other people to that group.
So the grant was actually awarded to the chamber,
The
right?
grant was awarded to the city and then assigned to the IDA.
So it would have to be bonded, not borrowed.
You're all, this is why we need people like bankers involved, Brian, because you're speaking languages that are,
The right way?
that's gonna be a learning process for me, Brian, this whole thing.
Because they're very particular on whose funds, who's paying when it comes to the grant stuff. So I guess the first thing I'd want clarification on is who's basically got to cut the checks, who's required to cut the checks to make sure we stay in line with the grant and whatnot. And then depending on who that is, so if it's the chamber, you can borrow. If it's the city, it would have to be bonded for financing.
What if it's the IDA?
The IDA would also have to be
Probably
bonded. as
I believe
well.
it's the IDA, just so you know. I
Okay.
believe that is, because I believe that's who, the city is awarded the grant,
The
correct?
city is awarded the grant, and I guess from my understanding, they're kind of the keeper of the, well, at the end of the day, we're spending the money up front and submitting it for reimbursement down the road
That's right.
To the.
to New York State.
Because we had to verify that the IDA, I know for sure, they asked us, who was the agency that would have the money to be able to support this grant?
Who's the grant agreement? The state grant agreement, who are they entering into the agreement with?
It would be with the city of Norwich.
And would we have, I would assume we'd want to have some kind of an agreement with the city related to that assignment.
Right, and there will be. There is a process. I'm not familiar with the process because I haven't gone through the process, obviously, but
But there will be, actually, just like they assigned the contract for the hotel. They wouldn't assign the contract for the hotel to Principal Holding until Principal Holding demonstrated the ability to execute that contract, right? So we're gonna have to do the exact same thing with the city, and the city will assign that to the IDA, at least if it follows the DRI process. That's how it works.
And I think what we need to probably focus on initially, what most of our focus on would be some of those legalities.
Right.
Because what potentially could happen is with many granting agencies, they specifically exclude any pre-agreement costs. So if we incur any expense prior to the proper agreements being executed, then those.
Hence the no buzzable doors downstairs, RC. I won't spend any money, hence the no compressor, because I'm trying to get as much of this under the build as I can to say that counts, because everything we do up here counts towards that match.
Correct.
So it's beautiful. So any work we do for the chamber up here, or the building in general, for the maintenance of the building, the roof, the doors, that counts. So I don't want to do any of that for us. unless I had to.
And I guess my suggestion is, at least at this stage, granted it has been awarded, but we want to pay particular attention to the necessary agreements being put in place and when.
Yep.
Before we start to incur.
And we have a project leader now at New York State that I have direct access to, and I think we'll firm up what that detail looks like.
Yep.
But from my understanding, the city was awarded the money, and we are technically the project sponsor. We pay for everything that we are looking to do, and then submit it through the city for reimbursement. Not through the city; it goes through the city to the state, and then it gets cut back to us. But
That's exactly, I think he's articulated that exactly right, because we had to go to the city council and ask permission to be able to apply for this grant on their behalf, right? So all of those things.
We'll firm that up.
We'll firm up, but we have a month, because it's gonna take us
Yeah,
a
good
month
time.
to get the detail down around what's the architectural design priced out at now, and what portions of that need to be completed by what type of contractor. So while we're doing that, concurrently, we're gonna be put in the team I want to start to look at, out of those 7 people I just mentioned, if that's okay. If we start to, that's who we'll call together. If Brian, you feel like we need to have a banker in there, frankly, you were on that list, but we excluded you because at first I thought MDT would probably be one of the people we'd go to finance this thing. So I didn't want to make a conflict of interest. So, but I'm open to anybody being on that team.
And it's possible we could have folks in.
Coming in now.
Yeah, depending on whatever the issue at hand is. And again, I get back to those agreements, and my only caution is that sometimes with granting agencies, those agreements can take a very long period of time. And I've seen them, as John knows, I've sometimes seen them take a year or more just to get the agreements done.
Yep. And that's why we were a little taken aback by their saying this process is different.
Good.
So they were very clear that as a matter of fact, if we're not gonna be open by next fall, they wanna know why as fast as possible.
Good.
So, yeah.
Just thinking outside the box.
Yeah, please.
Rather than necessarily financing, and Jeff, I'm glad you're here, because this would be a question for you. Since it is gonna be reimbursed, is it something the county, since we're in the Schenectady County IDA, is it something the county would be willing to outlay, for lack of a better term, in cash, knowing the money's coming back? That way there's no interest costs or fee costs, because even with a bond, there's a fee, annual fees with those. Is that even a possibility? Would they consider that?
Good question. Have to ask and look into it with the treasurer and others.
Okay,
I'll come over and see you, Jeff. I'd be
Okay.
happy to talk about it with you, Bill, and put it in front of the PED. We're not gonna be ready to do that tomorrow, obviously. But I'd be happy to talk about that, Jeff. I didn't even think about that, Brian.
I just
For reference too, like when you're doing your reimbursements in your RFP, when you get your contractor's agreement, you're probably gonna want to put in there that you can only do reimbursements every 3 months. So really your outlay may only be $200,000 at a time. You're not gonna finance the whole $1.5 million at that first level either.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, essentially, you're just trying to cash flow it, so it may be a pretty small nut,
I see I'm gonna have you come and join me for those conversations. Or maybe what we'll do is, because again, this is gonna be a tremendous learning opportunity for us, because we hope to do more of it. He's got some other things that, we're not gonna get too deep into that right now, but there's some other grants. We're gonna talk to PDD about it tomorrow, before we come back to you guys, but there's some other grants we wanna pursue that are, very pertinent to not only the DRI, but, other initiatives as well, like enterprise grants, housing grants, vacant property grants. He's got other work, this will be very helpful for us to learn how to do this process.
Well, and I think once we have some sort of draw schedule,
Mhm.
then we can make that decision on whether or not we can even
Yep.
pursue financing,
exactly, we can.
right? Because if we're gonna outlay 200 and get 200 back, well, we can afford that.
And the way that I originally had spoken to you guys about this was, this is a little different for us because this project has been one we've been deeply engaged in, not from the IDA's perspective, not only from the IDA, but from the commerce perspective and Sharon and this, so it's a very intertwined project. But yesterday with Sharon, I tried to make sure I was clear in our roles and responsibilities. The place is the entity that will be responsible for running and managing that daycare center, ensuring that their budget is up to standard, ensuring that all the state specifications are met. Their board will be ensuring that they have the right people. Our job as the IDA is a landlord. We're the landlord there, they're here as a Commerce Shenango, we're here to help them. Should they have any issues, if there's challenges, making sure they're being supported by the community. But I don't think we need a separate board for the daycare center. It just gets confusing. I spoke about this with RC. Managing, dealing with another board that has some combination of commerce, the place, and us, who at the end of the day, if the place was to say, I no longer can support this because my mission is different, I don't think that will ever happen. We wouldn't ask to be on the Coleman Center's board, or if Coleman Center called up and said, I can run that for you, we'd say, God bless you. Sign the lease agreement. So I just got a little deep into the weeds because I helped with the project. Like, does that make sense to you guys, what our role should be? And okay, our responsibility, they're signing up to run the daycare.
We provide them.
To RC's point about the legal niceties, has the state talked about any risk of recapture? Prior projects I've been involved in, the state often reserves the right to recapture if you don't meet certain goals. And so, I mean, what the discussion here has been a lot of, well, it's reversal, we're gonna get it back, we're gonna get it back. Well, I've been down this road with the state, and sometimes they like to take things back if you haven't met goals. So again, on the legal niceties side, I'd hate to see us, lay out this money, assuming it's coming back, and then the state can say, you didn't meet some goal, or, God forbid, the child care center doesn't function, it doesn't work, they don't get the head count, revenue, et cetera, and then if the city's the applicant, then the city's gonna be looking at us saying, you did this to us.
There's no doubt, all those things are valid. So that's exactly why it's a great question, and it actually scares us a little bit because unlike other DRI projects that take a long time, there's checkpoints along the way, and this one is not. So we're going to have to go very judiciously to ensure we cross all those Ts and dot those Is, because you're right, it's not even a matter of, will they claw it back? They won't give it to you. So that'll be the problem. But if you don't do everything the way you're supposed to do it, and that's why, just not to get off on a deep tangent, a lot of DRI grants have come back to us because the people who've been granted them have said, I can't go through all those hoops and be ensured I can be reimbursed. So they've stepped away. Now, those are for 50% match grants. This is for a 10% grant. They don't have an IDA board with an attorney and a former, county clerk here. We have a lot of people that are engaged with a planner in the city. We're going to cross all those T's, Lou, because I'm as nervous as anybody about that, right?
And Lou, they did touch on that during our meeting.
Yes.
I mean, then that's the initial step with our building our project budget. They're going to spit back goals that we have to follow throughout the process. In addition to having a project leader, we also have a compliance leader.
Yes.
And I think just doing our due diligence and having that communication, hey, is this right? Is this right? Is this right? Along the way is going to be really important for us to do that, because it is at the end, you submit all these receipts and they can say, well, no, you didn't do that correctly, or you didn't hire the right contractor. That wasn't the right equipment. They have the right to do that. So
Yeah, so I mean, that's one issue, getting the reimbursement.
Right.
If there's any, just hypothetically speaking, let's say the child care center has to be up and running for, I'm just making this up, 5 years, and it has to serve, 250, children. And what happens if that goal is not met? Does the state come back and say, well, you only met 80%, so you got to give us back 20?
Correct.
So for
percent,
this grant, that's not so much a worry, because this grant is strictly for construction. So as long as the project is done and the building is completed, that's all this grant is worried about. So next grants we start to go after, or Sharon goes after, to actually build the program and get expenses for the program. That's where those.
And that burden will be on the place. So that's why we're very clearly creating our delineations. You're asking great questions, and Tyler, I gotta give him, Tyler has been very clear in asking those same questions, because all we need to know is what the rules are, and we'll follow them.
So we've been, Lou, that's a great question. We went down that road with the railroad project, because it specifically stated that, a railroad had to stay running and be operational for 5 years. So our fear was that they're gonna come back to us and ask for $45 million back, due to the reasoning that the railroad kept going out of service. It was, an act of God. They never came back to us. And we met that 5-year mark, finally, because it kept raining. Essentially, we kept having washouts and things of that nature, but it's very real. And this board has suffered through those fears in the past. So, great question.
Good. Okay,
Any other questions on that one?
no, very good question.
Yeah, thank you. We'll pull that group together then and have an initial conversation, Tyler, if we could. Okay, I want to go to the new microphone. If you guys can take a look at this, there's one that looks like this. This Susan Payne, strategic planning consultant, this doctor right here. For those of you that weren't here, Lou, for those of you that were, you might remember back last year as part of this clean tech initiative, we were trying to figure out how to capitalize on the designation that Binghamton University just had reaffirmed, that there will be a site to be able to develop the next evolution of battery development and battery storage, that 8 counties in the region joined together. We, as a IEA, I think paid $5,000. The other 3 big regions, Steuben, Chemung, and Broome, paid $25 each. We got the study, the designation was reaffirmed, trying to figure out how to execute these strategies and take advantage. And I'll give you an example of that and how we might, in just a minute, requires more work. So they want to hire somebody to say, now how do you execute these strategies? Since you've won that designation, and again, the 3 larger IDAs are willing to put up $15,000 each to continue this work towards the 20-something needed. I'm going to ask that our IDA puts up $1,500, which is similar to what Tioga has done, which is similar to what I think it was not Chemung, but one of the other smaller counties has already committed $1,500. We're just trying to close the gap because I want to be part of this execution. And here's why. If we continue our work with the water district and we continue our work to figure out what to do with that Chobani plant, and ultimately, if that's a vacant piece of property, this study talks about how places like Shenango County might never be able to attract the battery manufacturer, but you might be able to attract the ancillary services that support both the work that's going on down in Binghamton and potentially the work that's going on. Because as we think about counties like Herkimer County and others that aren't really part of this, where they're capitalizing on is the supply chain needs of those 2 industries. And that's where they're trying to capture growth. And this study would continue to help us figure out. We'd be part of the 8-county region, figuring out how to leverage the investment. It's going to primarily occur in the southern tier. And I'd like to be a part of that. And I'm certain they'll allow us, whether we give them money or not, but putting a little skin in the game shows that we're vested.
And we invested in it once, and it seems to, for $1,500, it seems to make sense to, let's close the loop.
I think so. I think at the end of the day, you benefit from honestly, this investment that you're seeing, and Shane, I would welcome his input because obviously he's part of this influence, but the more success you see in a region when you have things going on like UHS and it's tied to other areas and other parts because UHS is parented there, the more investment you see in infrastructure grants that come this way and potentially, more opportunities that, we'll continue to apply for. So being thought of as part of this region is important for us. And I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing us win these grants.
You also have a major manufacturer in Great New York who's very interested
Exactly.
in clean tech and that particular.
In increasing, and I'm not going to talk about tech we just met on yesterday, but in increasing our advanced manufacturing capabilities and that doesn't mean attracting new ones. It means growing the ones we've got primarily is part of this work. That's where we believe. And that Shenango County can truly benefit from that. Unison, Raymond, Chobani, Alvagen, I don't have to go too far.
Well, I think Afton too, Bainbridge, anything off the interstate that's 15, 20 minutes from Broome County, Green, obviously bordering the Broome County line. I think this is a project that's more county-based and less Norwich-centric than anything. So I would love to make a motion that we approve the $1,500 expenditure to close the loop. This.
Mr. Book moves.
Second.
Mr. Galais seconds. Discussion. We'll vote.
Burton, aye.
Corey, aye.
Zeno, aye.
Leah, aye.
Woodford, aye. Carries.
Perfect.
Thank
Thank you guys very, very much. Okay, Cottage Bakery Building. You guys are familiar with that. We've talked many times about what I'd like to see us do with that. We've tried to attract Chobani to be interested in that. I'm going to try to close the loop one or two more times with them and not give up. But they have priorities that are, important and significant to them. And I understand that, and me too. And I know that they will participate in the DRI when it's right for them. But I have a situation with the Cottage Bakery Building where Kate has informed us that she's going to no longer operate that building as of the end of summer. Her daughter is running it now. I've spoken with her on multiple times about, how we might be able to help her, what we might be able to do to support her. Ultimately, that's just not the passion that she has, and so she's going to be closing that building. So honestly, I'd like to figure out exactly what should be done with that building. So we've contracted with a consultant to try to help us determine what it would take to truly create an incubator there. What our community needs and what most communities need is somebody to be able to pop up into. We have so many vacant storefronts just within the downtown of Norwich. We have so many vacant storefronts throughout our communities. And we have places like the woman up on 10A who has a little bakery that she does now. She's done pop-ups over here at Seasons. She doesn't want to take the risk of going out and opening up the storefront. We have other people like Rife Revor that would like to figure out whether that roaster business could be a walk-in touristy type of business where you can see him, not as much a coffee counter, but clearly we'd like to be able to test some of those things. Once again, Tyler's doing some research, and there's a town called Bellefontaine, Ohio, where they have a true incubator center there that you can get a 1 month lease, a 2 month lease, a 3 month lease. They have a variety of sizes, 600 feet to 1,600 square feet, where people can open up a store or a business or just a location where they're trying to have an office to get themselves grounded and started. And we've spoken with the state about this. And again, it's part of this regional initiative to try to create a vibrant economy throughout Shenango County. Other people are doing this right now. You have one in Hamilton, Colgate sponsors that. You have one in Binghamton, the Kaufman Center, $5.4 million annually for Binghamton University. We don't have that. So what we need to do is figure out what would need to be true in that building to really repurpose it. And there is money available to do that. The state's very interested. So for a few grand, we can hire Labella, study that, and tell us what would be true, where do we apply, what grants do we go for, how do you run it, what's the operating expenses, and the state's incredibly open to that idea. And I believe that pays a lot more dividends than just putting another bakery in 5,000 square feet. That's how big that is, 5,000. What could we do with the basement? Could that still be used for food distribution in times of emergency? Because do we need that for storage for this micro center? I don't know. But I certainly would like to figure something out for that building that could be exponentially beneficial, because that's what it was intended for. Unless anybody has other input on that, that's the path we're going to take.
That's the path you're gonna go. That's the way you're gonna go.
That's the way we're going to go. We're going to first figure it out. I'll see if they come back and tell us, no, I want to sell the building. Because the DCC owns it. Right? They say it's just a retail location, it's not viable, it costs you $2 million a year to run it. You get the Kaufman Center. I want to explore. Is the Kaufman Center interested in a satellite? I want to explore. Is there a way that we could potentially partner with Colgate? Who else does these things now? Like the Excite Center in Oneonta? I don't know. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. And this has failed as an incubator, in my opinion, because an incubator doesn't mean you just give people space. It means you give them support to understand how to get that business from where it is to where it needs to be. We're not doing that. We're just giving them cheap rent. And that's not the recipe for success. So if we are equipped to do that, are there others that we could partner with that are? Could we?
Yeah, and I don't believe Sal needs our approval to do so,
Yeah.
but. I mean,
It's just service design. I wanted you to be aware of what we were doing.
I'm okay with it. I suggest you proceed.
All right.
Old business.
The mission statement, if you go to the last page, I believe it is in your packet, you'll see our current mission statement. And I'm not gonna read these all to you, but we did want to take the time to make sure that we incorporated green energy in our mission statement. There's two of them that are there. One is slightly less verbose, but both of them, I believe, support, and I'm open to a vote, I'm open to just pick it, I'm open to try again.
Did everybody read these? Anybody have a preference? B. I kind of like B myself. I will bring up, we've mentioned this a couple times, Taylor brought up the idea of including energy in our mission statement a couple of meetings ago. Sal the way he's put it in both of the proposed mission statements is clean energy solutions. I just had a couple of ideas. One, we just eliminate the word clean, or two, I went back and looked at our last board meeting, and I believe it was Mr. Corey mentioned, he used the term clean and affordable. And I kind of like that idea. So my suggestion is proposed statement B, and instead of clean energy solutions, we say promote clean and affordable energy.
I like that.
solutions.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion is second, and that's to adopt with the amendment.
Yep.
Mr. Burton?
Now, if you say clean and versus clean and or, then it has to be clean and it has to be affordable if it's an and, right? So I know the words matter when we're doing this here. So if you want somebody to do nuclear and someone says that's not clean and they have those smaller nuclear things they're running, some of them may not be clean, but it might be affordable, so.
Nuclear energy is the cleanest form of energy.
Well, I'm just saying,
What it says is we're
someone else may have a different
but-
opinion, not clean, that's what I'm saying, we have to be careful about the wording, but I'm just worried about an and.
How about
All
and or?
right, so
And or, I
I'll
think-
amend my motion to amend statement B to say promote clean and or affordable energy solutions for a more sustainable future.
Does it work for you, Jack?
Yeah, I think this gives you more flexibility.
No, actually, it's a good point. I appreciate you bringing it up. Discussion? We'll vote.
Bird eye.
Corey, aye.
Zeno, I.
Clear eye.
Woodford, aye, carries.
Perfect,
There you go, Sal.
thank you. Okay.
8 months later.
The Norwich Water District, I don't have much of an update on that. We've met a couple times now. We need to pursue an engineer to help us apply for a feasibility study on that. The city, that ball is in the city's court to hire those engineers. Tyler has had a conversation with them. They're waiting for that to come forward. Thankfully, the Planning and Economic Development Committee and Jeff and Bill Crane are supportive of us using some money set aside for that from the county. So there's really not much to talk about there. High Bridge Wind, we got that check, we're paid, I think everything's current, so we just wanted to close the loop on that one.
The only thing related to hybrids too is that we went into executive session, obviously, and discussed different contractual agreements there. We do need to formally adopt what we discussed last month in executive session, but I'm waiting for our attorneys to give me, they're gonna give me a document to do that.
Yep.
So when that comes, then we'll go ahead and do that.
Yeah, essentially, we're amending the pilot.
Because the auditors have asked for that to be memorialized in meetings and also to get copies of the agreements so they can do their thing.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Okay,
Sounds good.
and so we're doing this now because there's a lot of events going on this summer. For instance, there's a leadership event going on right now today from Achieve, and there's a ice cream social that we've committed to for all the nonprofits across the street. We're gonna try to get more consistent in our events, and we're also gonna try to make sure you guys are aware of them, because you guys are the ones often that have the conflicts, and this way you see those. So everything between now and our next meeting, it's a shorter list for this board, because we meet monthly. It kind of gives you an idea. Summer's busy, we've got a lot of things coming up. Hopefully you guys can make it. I'm not gonna go through too much more in an executive session, because I want to take advantage of the fact that we're gonna finish on time and ask for an adjournment, so we can put this television, we've got a small enough group, into a hardwired office back here. And that way, otherwise Harris Beach Winter's not going to be able to present to us. And I want to be able to call the two aldermen who dropped off and don't want to listen anymore because they keep getting kicked out. So if you guys are okay with that, RC, we'll just take an adjournment. I don't have any other business unless we can close the meeting after they're done. But does anybody else have any reason why they can't just take a 5-minute adjournment and we'll open back up in the back room? Coffee, John, I'm in Texas, you could,
We'll recess for a few minutes.
few minutes.
I won't be able to
recess.
record that live.
What's
I
that?
won't be able to record that live,
Why not?
because if I stop this, I can't restart it.
Don't stop it. Is it wireless right now?
Yes.
Well, just carry it in the back room.
Yeah, just like.
Just carry it in
Okay,
the
so
back
it's
room.
still recording, so everyone
Don't
knows.
stop it. Just carry it in the back room. We're on adjournment. For the two people that are watching, that they can walk when they do that back room. We'll shut the TV down. And we'll, otherwise, this hair speaks for itself. It's gonna be $450 an hour of them not being able, us not being able to hear.
Motion to adjourn?
No, we're just recessing.
Just recessing, no adjournment.
We're gonna come back here.
You can, Riley. Yeah, you can do anything you want. We're gonna go right in that back room. No, you don't have to. Let's put it that way. You'll be able to leave right from that back room.
Okay.
And we're gonna call Herb and see if we can't get this bumped up again, John.
I already called him this morning. But I told him we can't do anything because we're live.
How are you, Sean?
So,
Too bad.
seems to take busy in retirement.
I have my moments. How's things with you?
Good. Good as can get, yes. So did I see that your wife is retiring this year or just
She
retired?
did. She just
Yeah, that's what I
retired.
thought.
40 years. All in Oxford.
Yeah.
She essentially had one job for 40 years. It's amazing.
That is amazing, right?
Does she plan on staying involved too?
No, probably not. That she gets, she hears it a lot as far as.
Signature, is that working?
Yeah,
RC,
Looks like it.
RC, you missed one of these.
Oh, did I? Student teaching and that kind of thing, and she said. Oh, thank you. Good morning.
I really started to wonder, because again, if we don't have any aldermen here, what do we do? You know what I mean? They have to be the ones to say, go do this, you know what I mean? Like, we'll pay for it for the idea.
You're on camera still. Yep. Sorry. Do you want me to shut those blinds? Is that light going to be bothering people?
Yeah, well. Shine up my bald head at people.
Yeah, let's figure out how to shut the light off in my office and keep it off. I would sit there all day without light. Yeah. It's got one of the eyes, so every time you move.
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah.
I would encourage it since you're like.
Your story on it last week. so.
We got a lot of community support.
He should have closed the loophole on that bed tax thing though, because he didn't explain that as well. That's a self-fulfilling statement. No local taxpayers pay for it.
They understand we're not in executive session, right?
I think they're just chatting.
Thank you, Tyler.
Jump back in.
Steve said he's gonna get right back on again.
Okay.
He just sent me a text and said he was gonna step aside to the restroom as well.
I know. I just repeat.
I'm just staring at a
Still not
wall
saying
instead,
anything.
yeah.
It's not executive session. No.
We have a presentation.
Essentially, follow-up to discussion we had with them. Was it last
Last
month,
month?
Sean, or was it
Yeah.
the month before?
I think it was last month. I want to say I wrote about it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you had an article, I can't remember which one, I think it was last month.
Who's the Alderman Award for?
Is that your neck of the woods?
Nope, I'm one.
She's in my ward,
I'm in your ward.
Eric Warren.
Lives on your street even, right?
Yeah.
Pretty sure, right?
Pretty close to you.
Yeah, when I first moved in, he was going around asking people about the stop signs that are on the street now. I was like, I don't have an opinion, I just moved in here.
It's a little cozy in
Stop
here.
signs are good.
They're good unless you're trying to use it as a cutoff between not going, the main street way and over. People would speed through. My dad was one of them all the time. But
Yeah, you're right. I don't know.
But I've seen more people run those stop signs. I used to sit out on my porch for entertainment and watch people get pulled over there. I think
Just leave it.
the police would just know people would run them because they were new and they'd pull them over.
Stop signs are optional.
Apparently, back there.
Well, in years ago.
Now we're waiting for the attorneys. Thank you guys for your patience.
There were no stop signs, so it was really freewheeling.
Wow, last.
A couple more chairs available.
It's a perfect amount of seats. Down.
Taylor, your
We're
AI
waiting
keeps
for-
sending
we're waiting
me
for our
messages.
Oh,
Yeah, I just got a message from her.
what?
Yeah, your AI keeps sending me messages this morning.
Not the first time and won't be the last.
Thanks for sharing the recap, Taylor.
Well, gotta figure out how to stop that for me.
Not too much.
It says Alderman Ward Four talked the most.
Bill 4. I heard that's 4, isn't it? Figures was 4. Which alderman's on, Bill or Matt?
It's not.
Matt.
Matt Kaisa?
Bill, beautiful, okay, Bill. Matt, I thought this is the nuisance meeting, Bill, I was gonna text you right now. That we have the original, we're waiting for Matt Kayaza, if he doesn't join, that's okay, because the buildings, we were talking about specifically, which do the 3 buildings on the corner, right, Bill? This is gonna require the council's approval to be able to do this, I think, because ultimately the IDA was willing to have an attorney, Harris Beach Murtha, show us how they deal with this in Onondaga County. There's a gentleman who's gonna make a presentation about how he would suggest we do that here in the city of Norwich and do it specifically to the buildings on the corner of Broad and what's that side street there? By the Bluebird Building. You can let go. And so, remember, Bill, we talked about this at the last meeting, and we ran out of time. So Joe and Steve Mayer from Harris Beach were going to walk us through the process they would employ if they were hired by the city to address nuisance buildings here. And then what we would do, the reason the IDA would do this is because there are several other municipalities in the county who would love to know how to address their nuisance buildings. And we don't have a path forward right now. So if these buildings are in good tax status, but they have multiple infractions or issues that, like safety, health, code violations, that they won't address, then we need a path forward for our communities. And there is a path forward. There's a couple different ways to do it. Shenango County doesn't have a land bank. I'm gonna talk about that in a minute, because there's a development there. But Jeff didn't join us, he could have obviously joined us as well. But that's what we're here for today, Bill, is to have them walk us through that process and to, from your perspective, say, is this something the city would want to do as a test case for these buildings? And I'm gonna let Joe walk through that process in just a second. But that's the purpose. Everybody here remembers those conversations. We know where we're at. Okay,
I'm very interested to hear.
thank you for joining us.
Hey everyone, how are you? Nice to see you guys again. Give me 1 second. Let me just share my screen quickly.
We can share our camera here, right? Oh, we got it already. Okay. Thank you. You all have that presentation in front of you as well.
You have the last one.
Oh, this is the,
This
okay,
is the
thank
new
you.
one, yes.
Thank you, Todd.
Yeah, this is a new one. It's a little more abbreviated because I wanted to really hone in on some of the questions that were raised and some of the items that were raised. I gave a really high level view of the strategies at the last meeting. Between this meeting, the last meeting and this meeting, I wanted to really hone in. One of the things I said I would do was to actually look at the City of Norwich Charter, or the City of Norwich Code, which has some strategies built into it. So I noted some of the sections that we may be able to pursue here. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Sure. Okay. All right. So I think the best strategy to pursue here would be a litigation strategy in Supreme Court. After looking at the City of Norwich Code, there's Chapter 199, Article 1. And that does allow the city to commence an action in Supreme Court for the abatement of code violations. And I understand there were some concerns about the cost of a Supreme Court litigation. I think there's really 3 reasons why Supreme Court litigation would be the right move here to accomplish the goals you're looking to accomplish. The first reason is really flexibility in terms of an order or relief. There's more flexibility in Supreme Court relief than there would be in other venues. The second would be efficiency. There's the possibility for a quicker resolution on it through a Supreme Court litigation. And then third is just more predictability. There's more rules and there's just less of a chance of for lack of a better term, kangaroo court in Supreme Court. There's more structure there. So I'll go into those reasons in a little bit more detail. So Supreme Court, excuse me 1 second. The judge in fashioning a remedy in a codes case has more flexibility in terms of what they can do. The Supreme Court judge can essentially issue injunctive relief. The other option would be to do this in city court. City court has limited remedies available. Under the Uniform City Court Act, city courts can really only issue fines and they can put property owners in jail. We would, in our case, want to actually see the properties fixed, either by the city doing the work or having the owner do the work. And if the property is fixed, we'd also like an order that allows us, if we do the work, or the city, if they do the work, to be able to assess those costs on the tax roll. Supreme Court judge could order or fashion a remedy that would allow us to do that. So there's flexibility in remedy. Like I said, city court limited in what you can actually ask the judge to do, but Supreme Court, there's more flexibility. Any questions at all about that?
Good explanation.
No.
Okay. There's also efficiencies that you can achieve in Supreme Court. I guess I'll use this example and ignore the politics of the scenario, but I do want to give an example of how I was able to, in one case, obtain a very quick, at least temporary resolution to an issue. I represent a town in upstate New York, and in 2023, my town supervisor on a Saturday got a call from the mayor of New York City saying they were going to ship up 4 or 5 buses of migrants, put them into an area that really wasn't equipped to handle those individuals. So we had to quickly come up with a case. We used a tool called an order to show cause, and we filed, we had papers. We found out about it on a Saturday. We were told the buses were coming on a Tuesday. We completed the paperwork on Sunday. All documents were signed on Monday, filed with the court on Monday, and we were able to get a very quick temporary restraining order on Monday afternoon. And it essentially enjoined the owner of the property from using the property in a way they wanted that was in violation of the code. So there is the possibility of getting a very quick resolution in a Supreme Court decision if you choose the right vehicles. Now, it's very case dependent and very fact specific. There would have to be some sort of emergency scenario that would allow us to do that. But you can, in theory, get a very quick resolution to an issue. And then also, I mentioned another benefit of using the Supreme Court option is there's just more, there's more formality. Rules of evidence have to be adhered to if there's a trial or a hearing. Deadlines are strictly adhered to, and some of the lower courts, like city courts, those things aren't necessarily required. In Supreme Court, they are. Now, cost. And I know this was a big issue that was brought up at the last meeting. It's hard to say, you're kind of staring down the barrel of a gun with any sort of litigation. It's hard to be able to predict what the cost is at the outset. I gave a pretty low estimate. I would think 5K at the low end. It could be as high as 6 figures at the high end if the property owner retains counsel and we do have a full trial. Now, in my experience, these are dilapidated properties. They're abandoned properties for the most part. The property owners don't, in these cases, actually have funds to even maintain their properties. So the likelihood of them being able to afford an attorney to actually, litigate and defend against these cases is somewhat low. I can't guarantee it's not going to happen, but I do a lot of codes cases, and in any given day in codes court, and I do codes court weekly. Of the 10 or 15 cases that I have on, maybe 1 or 2 have retained an attorney, and that's even somewhat of a stretch. So, my estimate would be somewhere probably towards the lower end, but these are test cases. So, and while we get into this, we can certainly keep the IDA updated weekly to let you know, here's where your costs are. And if the costs are getting too high and it's just not working, you guys are free to terminate the representation at any time. So if it's a matter of just doing weekly check-ins, let you know, here's where we're at, this is the work that's being done, this is where the cost is, and the board can make a determination that they either want to move forward with it or they don't want to move forward with it.
It's worth, in my opinion, and again, Joe, I appreciate this, and I can only speak to the ones we're talking about. Think about the costs associated with Jan Papolino and Bill Loomis and the mayor walking that building every week for 10 straight weeks or 12. I mean, there's all kinds of additional expenses. The police department that has to answer these things, the fire department. And if I'm not mistaken, none of those costs can get added to that building should we take it, but these costs can. So ultimately, the attorney's fees get added to the cost of repurposing the property. And so there's less profit to have to share once you put that property back on the tax rolls. So
in kind of our philosophy, we're just looking to establish kind of a process and helping the municipalities along. They all deal with some kind of building issues in their respective towns. The city is is probably the logical place to start because they have a variety of structures that give them some harbor.
that's right. Commercial, they have residential. You're exactly
So
right.
we can't necessarily pick one out and say, but let's kind of build a template.
That's
as to
exactly
what
right.
this could look like. And,
That's
and
exactly.
really our role as an IDA is to kind of help them get to where they want to go.
That's exactly. So again, you articulated perfectly, RC. The Planning and Economic Development Committee is essentially our boss. And so when I went to them and say, we're going to pursue this, 4 of them said, hey, when you learn how, come see me, because I've got 3 of them that I'd like to do it in town of Bainbridge. I got 2 of them I'd like to do. So what we want to do is say, here's how it works. We took a relatively complicated one because there's 2 or 3 buildings on the corner that we'd like to go at all at once and said, this is how much it costs to go after these buildings in Norwich. And here's the step-by-step process. Here's where I could get more expensive. Here's where you could potentially learn some things that we learned from that. That's all we're trying to do. Bring it back to that county board of supervisors, that conference of mayors that we hold and say, if you want to do it, this is how we would suggest you do it, right? So I'm sorry, keep going, Joe. I just want to make sure we spoke to that. Thank you.
No problem. So what's the ultimate goal here? I discussed this internally as far as what you all would like to see in terms of these properties. I think the ultimate goal is cleanup and also to obtain ownership. So, what we're thinking here is if we bring one of these actions, we could ask the judge to give the city an order to go onto the property, clean it up, and then have those costs assessed onto the tax roll. Once they're assessed onto the tax roll, if those costs don't get paid by the owner, the city can essentially begin an in rem foreclosure process, take the properties. At which point the city can transfer the properties to a land bank if one is formed, or even possibly an LDC. And I can turn it over. I think Steve's on from my office. Steve's more of an expert on the formation of local development corporations and those types of entities. So he could speak to that process. Steve, if you want to go ahead and just maybe briefly speak to, what an LDC, how an LDC is formed and why you would want to put it into an LDC, that might be helpful.
Yeah, so just really quick, LDCs typically in our world are formed, in your case, it would be by the Board of Supervisors. They would essentially approve a resolution authorizing the formation of the LDC. And then at a minimum, you're gonna have 3 directors that make up the board. And really the main benefits here of an LDC, especially in this instance, my recommendation would never be have these properties go into the IDA's hands. The IDA is the entity that's going to have all the resources and so forth. And the last thing you want is, somebody slipping and falling on those properties, or, there's some issue. So the use of an LDC provides you that liability protection. And they are also bankruptcy remote entities. So those are kind of the big reasons, especially in this instance, and the goals that we're trying to achieve here. As Joe said, either a land bank, if one is ultimately formed in the future, or an LDC would be able to achieve your goals.
And so, time frame to establish an LDC, how long does that take?
It's usually a pretty quick process. It'll be contingent on kind of timing for the Board of Supervisors with their meetings. So like I said, typically what they'll do is they'll initially adopt a resolution authorizing the formation of the LDC. And then the quote unquote members, which here would likely be the county acting by and through the Board of Supervisors, would then appoint the directors and essentially approve your bylaws. And then once that's done, essentially your board of directors would hold their first meeting in which the directors would be appointed. You'd adopt your bylaws. You would appoint any officers that you want, any policies, procedures, and so forth. So it's usually a pretty quick process. It's not something that's gonna, would take 6 months to do. So it can be done fairly quickly.
And so, next question. We don't have a land bank in the county, and I've talked about that. Mike and Jeff did come over a few different times, and you've heard me say repeatedly, I'm not sure the process. There's 28 of them now, I think, in the state, and the land banks are equipped to deal with this. There's a woman named Jessica Haas who works for the Broome County. She runs the Broome County Land Bank. She teaches a master's in public administration at SUNY Binghamton. She called this week and said that her class would like to take on some practical work experience, and they'd like to take Shenango County as a test case and walk through the entire process of what it would take to establish a land bank. So we're going to take her up on that. She'll literally give us the template. We could do that work concurrently with this LDC, right, Joe? It doesn't preclude us from doing a long-term solution, a land bank, right?
You don't
Yeah,
need both.
absolutely. You
You don't need both, that's what I'm saying, Brian, but I wanna make sure, I don't wanna, that may take a while, right? Because this is Tyler and I don't have the bandwidth nor the capacity to start the process of learning how to set this land bank up. So I'll take a bunch of graduate students that want to go out and figure out how to do that and show us the roadmap. I can then present that to the Board of Supervisors and say, is this something that we think would benefit our community, right? And if we do, we should go forward with that. Concurrently, though, we could be setting up this land bank or this LDC to address blighted properties now. That's what I'm thinking, Brian. Unless I'm setting up this LDC is expensive, or should I just wait to get the land bank, Joe, to go after these things, or should I? Because that's the long-term solution.
I think the land bank, the issue with the land bank is I do believe you need state authorization to form the land bank. You don't need state authorization to form an LDC. So, I mean, I think the LDC is a good interim solution.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And then, once the state authorizes the formation of the land bank, then you may be able to just dissolve the LDC. But the LDC is definitely key here because these are problem properties. They may have vagrants and individuals going in, getting hurt, people setting fires. You just don't know. So you don't want this in either the city's hands or the IDA's hands from a liability perspective. You want a separate entity to put these in to just protect your assets.
I just wanted to make sure that the LDC, setting that LDC up was a decent interim step, and you confirmed it is, so I'm totally comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a good short-term fix but you have a long-term solution, so that's good.
And one thing I will add on the LDC front as well that makes it efficient is municipalities are essentially able to, which helps in this case, because you want to get it into a separate entity for liability purposes quickly, is it allows municipalities to transfer real property to LDCs without any need for public bidding or receiving fair market value. So you can do it instantaneously usually.
Good. And Lou had a question?
It wasn't a question, it was a comment, and actually RC and I ran a sidebar on it. I believe the city has an LDC, and actually RC thinks it's even bigger than the city, so there may be.
You think there is an LDC already?
I think my recollection, and it's somewhat vague, it's legacy, but Lou kind of has
Yeah?
similar recollection.
Where would I find that out?
There was a Greater Norwich LDC, was the city of Norwich, the town of Norwich, and the town of North Norwich. I used to attend some of their board meetings years ago.
That'd be perfect for this test.
And I believe, and again, it may be legacy, but there may be some other examples of LDCs that exist in the county as well. I have this, and it's very, very vague, so don't hold me to it, but I want to say Town and Village of Bainbridge may have one.
Who?
Town and Village of Bainbridge.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. They're the ones that want to do this too. So how would I figure that out? Where would I find that out?
I think the city.
The city?
Plus.
The only issue with the older LDCs is there's been a lot of law changes since possibly those LDCs were formed. So you'd want to make sure that the LDCs were, filing their annual filings that they need to be filing, and that they're structured in a way that comports with the law as it is right now, which we could certainly help with and look at their internal documents to just make sure they're up to snuff. The good thing about starting a new one is just there's no baggage. It's a new entity, and you don't know if there's any debts. There's no debts associated with it. There's no possibilities of filings not being done prior. So that'd be great if there's one formed. We just would want to make sure that the LDC is in compliance with whatever laws it needs to be in compliance with.
We're going to take your guidance on this going forward. So, Greg, we'll have you look at some other ones, and if look at what we've got. If we need a new one, great, because there's been plenty of municipalities that are going to need a new one. So, forming one for the county would make sense to me. But again, if that takes time, and there's already one we can step into for expediency, but again, we want to do this the right way. So we'll take guidance from you guys, Joe.
Okay. And then just items that would be needed to commence, and these are not exclusive items. This is kind of a wish list of items of things that we would want. Item 4 is definitely a necessary. We'd absolutely need city council, a resolution from city council to authorize us to commence the lawsuit. But there would need to be at least some preliminary engagement with the code enforcement office or the code inspector. And if there's a municipal engineer for the city too, just to build a case. I mean, this is a codes case, so the the witnesses that we'd be relying on, the statements we'd be relying on are either engineers or code enforcement officers. Code enforcement officers interpret the code, so they kind of have the final say over whether there's been a code violation or not. So there would need to have to be at least some preliminary conversations with them. A
We
police
have all
report-
that. We have all that, Joe, except for number 4. Every single
Okay,
one of
all
those.
right.
So we,
Okay, so then we're in good shape.
yeah, we have
We're in good shape
every,
to
we
get
have every
started.
single one of those. We can build on any one of those. We just need, that's why I wanted Matt and Bill to be here. Thank you. We just need that. We just need a resolution to say start.
Yeah, and there's no public hearing required on it, so it's simply a resolution just saying, you know, Heritage Beach can commence the action, and then we can get papers together and filed in pretty short order, depending on what the papers say. But yeah, that's basically the process. It's not, you know, obviously I would like to look at all the things that you have. So assuming you guys engage us, you know, we just ask that you send it over and we'll look at it. But once the city council passes the resolution to go, we're off to the races.
So here's my question for the IDA board. Does this still make sense for us to try to demonstrate how municipalities can address these by going after this? Like, it's our money we're gonna spend this first test case, right? Are you guys comfortable that this makes sense for the county?
I am not comfortable with us spending our money on this.
Okay,
100% against it,
okay,
honestly. Because we're not the ones that are getting it reimbursed if the property owners do pay. The city is. I think we need to be the instructor or the facilitator between the attorneys and the city as necessary, or give the city the tools to do this, or help in the roadmap. I don't think we can be the financier of this. I'm not for that at all. Especially if we get into a situation where we start running. So let's say we got 5 of these going at a time. Even at $5,000 a pop, that's $25,000 that we would not see.
I'm not suggesting that we do that right now. My suggestion was you did it one time,
Yeah,
so that you could do it as a test.
I'm
case.
thinking long-term, right? Because I think this definitely could work.
Right.
And would work in the end. They have a lot of experience in doing it. So I don't question the validity of it working. I question the validity of why are we footing the bill?
Because I wanted to show people that it could be done, not that we would do it in perpetuity for anybody.
Yeah.
The city, the town, or anybody else.
I think that's a discussion we need to continue to have.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
That was the purpose of it though. So,
But I agree, as I said before, you know, our role, I see it as a facilitative role, but I think some of those details moving forward, we figure those out, and we don't need to take their time.
totally aligned. I'm not proposing one way or the other.
No,
I was simply bringing this as a recommend. Obviously, the board makes those decisions, so. We're being asked as a Commerce Shenango, as an IDA, as a
Absolutely.
local development corporation, to try to understand what are we going to do to help the DRI truly take traction. Frankly, the city has not made any traction in the 2.5 years that I've been here in addressing those nuisance buildings, and they've tried a number of times to do that. So we're trying to give them a solution that they can employ, not to be their financiers to go after these problems. Just to show them it can be done, because every time I brought this up in the past to every municipality, I've received the pushback that, what about having to share the money? You can't just sell it now. You have to put it up for auction. There's no way to do this. This is eminent domain. So the reason to do this, Brian, is to show people it can be done and overcome every single objection as to why it can't be done. And until somebody does it, nobody will. That's my only reason why.
Yeah, the other thing you may want to consider, and this is a unique situation because typically the city would reach out to us and we would represent the city, but the IDA is leading the charge here because there's benefits to the IDA also with the redevelopment of these properties. It may be possible to have the IDA and the city enter into some sort of intermunicipal type of agreement where if, once again, these attorney's fees, we're going to seek to have them put onto the tax rolls, and if the property is sold in an rent foreclosure and that money is recouped by the city, there may be some mechanism by which the city would reimburse the IDA for the attorney's fees that have been spent. I'd have to explore that a little bit more, but that could be an option that we could look into as well, so that if you're not putting the bill, there's no guarantee you're going to get those costs, but there could be the possibility. So there at least may be the possibility of some recoupment through an agreement with the city.
Like a good compromise, that we'd be reimbursed for whatever expenses for this test case, right? If should the claim. So that's all I'm recommending. Any
All
other-
right, and then there's just one, I'm sorry, if there's
No,
any
you
other
go ahead,
questions.
Joe, go ahead. I
Okay,
wanted to know if
and then
you
there's
had
just one other possible strategy, which I don't feel as confident or comfortable with because I need to do a little more research into it, but Chapter 409 of the city code provides a process for the abatement of code violations, nuisance properties, and the assessment of costs. It's a little bit of a mess, that section of the code. It also doesn't comply with general city law, so I would need to do a little more research into, if we were to pursue this strategy, that basically this mechanism would have the code enforcement officer send a notice of violation to the property owner. And then if they didn't complete the property, they did not abate the property within 30 days, the city would just assess the cost against the property. The problem is there's no public hearing requirement within the law, and general city law requires a public hearing. So I don't know if this is really a viable option or not. Once again, I'd have to look into things like when the law was adopted, if the due process is sufficient or not. But this is another strategy that the city might be able to pursue, and it would not involve litigation.
To be honest with you,
I'm just
Joe, we've tried to address this from a city codes standpoint for at least 2.5 years now, and have made very little progress. So I don't believe this is a path that would be something the city would be able to undertake. And we'd have to do this for every single municipality. You have to go through their codes, make sure it was this. I mean, you have to, and I'm not signing the IDA up for that. So that's what I was just trying to sign us up for, was a test case that says, here's how you do this. And you should try to do it in your municipality. That's all. Because if we don't do it, nobody's going to.
All right, that's really all I got. Like I said, I was trying to hone in more on what the code allows, what the city code allows, and just into the litigation process, which I think would be the right move to go here. But happy to answer any questions you all may have. I hope I answered some of the questions that were brought up at the last meeting. But yeah, go ahead, shoot. If anybody's got questions, I'm happy to answer.
Joe, I have one when it comes to forming the corporation. Obviously, the corporation's gonna have to carry liability insurance on these properties and whatnot. Fines and whatnot, or like you said, you can put on the assessment. Can you also put costs for the corporation onto the assessment?
That's a little more tenuous. I think it's not. You mean the cost of actually forming the LDC?
Well, no, I'm talking ancillary costs thereafter. Once you have the LDC, you're also gonna need insurance on those properties, right? I would assume
Well, once the property's been transferred into the LDC, all the costs associated with the property are gonna be the LDC's responsibility at that point.
Right.
So you can't put those costs on a prior owner because the property's been transferred into the LDC at that point.
Okay. So we would have to get it back during the sale of the property.
The LDC would.
The only costs that we'd be able to actually put onto the property are costs incurred as a result of the litigation. So
Correct.
It would have to be the cleanup cost if the judge orders cleanup, that the city incurs as a result, the attorney's fees that are associated with it. Those are the hard costs hard and soft costs that you'd be able to assess against the property. The LDC and the formation of the LDC is a little bit more remote. Like that's not affiliated with the litigation or the code litigation itself. It's a more attenuated. So it would be a really big stretch to ask the judge to impose the LDC costs onto the property as part of the codes case.
Okay. So only pre-LDC reception you could put on the tax bill.
Correct.
Really
Yeah,
interesting.
I formed a number of LDCs last year, just so you know what you're looking at in terms of carrying costs. I think for a newly formed LDC that I formed in the past 6 months, directors and officers insurance ran about $1,500 a year, $1,600 a year. You've got to have an independent auditor, so you're going to have auditing costs that are associated with it. They have to do an independent audit each year. That's probably $3,000 to $4,000 a year, possibly. There's going to be some attorney's costs associated with it. Depending on how, there's a whole discussion. I mean, I don't know if the LDC wants to get tax exempt status, there's a cost associated with that. That's $5,000 to $10,000 if you wanted to do that. There's an annual meeting that requires the attendance of an attorney. So you're probably looking for an LDC carrying cost per year, on the low end, 10 to 15,000.
Again, we would have to.
Joe, I have a question.
Yep.
If you begin a process such as this to take the building and lo and behold, mid-process, there's a transfer of ownership. What happens in that case?
Well, we would amend the lawsuit to include the new owner. I guess it's the easiest way to put it.
Because ultimately the goal is to have them fix the property out. Remember, that's the true goal is to say, hey, if you don't fix it up, we're going to take it from you and fix it up. So fix it up. And the idea is, right, guys, once you do this, other landlords say, uh-oh, we better fix this up. So the next time they're notified that their building is considered a nuisance, right now, the reason these owners don't respond is because there's no teeth to any of it. Why should they? And that's what's happening. And truly, the long-term solution is a land bank, but we're not there yet. That's why other people have land banks to address this stuff. And these blighted and so Brian, those administrative costs are all part of the land bank, and then that becomes a public entity that's supported by a variety of means. And this Jessica Haas is going to show us how to do it. They have full-time employees, because ultimately, if this is successful, you want people working that land bank, right? Running those houses, fixing them up. They know this process, because in the long run, these buildings go back on the tax roll, and it is a self-fulfilling and self-paying process. So thank you, guys.
Joe and Sal, would you be willing to share the slide deck so that, we could explain it to the other council members and see if there is, agreement moving forward with the process?
Yeah, I'll do you one better. I'm willing to come to the city, and I'm happy to explain it, and I won't bill for it. I'm happy to just make a trip down. My wife lives in Scranton, so I'm going down to Scranton a couple times a week, so I can go right through your neck of the woods. I'm happy to come and meet with y'all and explain it to you too. But yeah, I'm happy to share the slides, and if you feel it necessary to meet, I'd be happy to.
That'd be great.
Appreciate that.
And Bill and Matt, listen, I'm totally with Brian here. If the city wants to take this on and they can form their own LDC, which they could, right? And the city wants to take this on, I'm happy to help with that too. It doesn't have to be an IDA initiative here. It doesn't have to be. Ultimately, a county land bank is the long-term solution. I really do believe that. But I want somebody to prove that to me and us from SUNY Binghamton. But if we want to go after these blighted properties, it is a lot cleaner if the city does it. But I just want to try to force that issue.
Help them get there.
Help them get there. That's a much more eloquent way of saying that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I want Bill and Matt to help me do that. That's all.
Yeah, problem is now 37, 39 has changed ownerships already, now we're in a problem again, Sal.
It doesn't matter to these guys' point. The first thing you gotta do is file that lawsuit. Lawsuit files the building, not the owner. So all you gotta do is tell them what the nuisance building is, the Bluebird building. Let's find out, Terry Volkeron, let's go and go figure it out. Let's go after all three of them. Though, if you're gonna set up an LDC, go after all three on that corner and set up that LDC. Set it up in the city if you want to, Matt. I'm okay with that, because that's all we're really trying to do here is bring you the tools. The IDA does not want to, we can't be the lead agent for the entire county to do these things. But I really would like somebody to make sure that downtown to Norwich gets cleaned up, because you got $20 million worth of investment going in there, and it doesn't do much if I've got the Bluebird and the Bodega the way they are right now.
Yeah. I think more importantly, I think we have to figure out if the city currently has an LDC and what language or documentation may perhaps need to be changed so that it's updated.
Let's find out.
Yep.
We'll do those things concurrently. I don't think we're asking for any action yet, because we still have to get the council's approval. There's nothing for the IDA to do here. I don't think we've determined whether or not the city should be hiring these guys to do this. We still have to look at the city, whether they have an LDC. I just wanted to close the loop on what we talked about last month. If we decide, or we do or don't want to support this going forward, it would require a vote and so on and so forth, but that's not at that stage.
And again, we brought up a specific property multiple
Yes.
times, but really, we're looking to develop a process that would work for any property.
Yes, yes. So that's why a countywide LDC is the long-term, or land bank is the long-term solution. We can talk about all that when we get to that point.
Yeah, Sal, if you want to go ahead and, I don't know if the city folks have my contact information, but if you want to go ahead and share my contact information with
You got it.
whoever's out here from the city, please feel free
Thanks,
to
Joe.
do that. And anybody from the city who wants to give me a call, I don't know when your city meetings are, or your city council meetings are, but this is certainly something that can be discussed in executive session. I'm happy to make the trip out to explain this in more detail to the city. I mean, there's IDA benefits that result from this, but this is really a city, from a legal perspective, it's a city process. So I do want the city to be aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it. So I'm happy to make a trip out to the city of Norwich for a meeting, and we can go into executive session. I can discuss this in more detail if need be.
Thank you
That
both.
sounds great to me.
Just to make you aware, Joe, the common council meetings occur on the third Tuesday of the month.
That's the one night I have off, so I think I can actually make that work.
Any other questions for Steve or Joe? Bill or Matt?
Certainly appreciate the time, appreciate you pulling this together. I'm certainly interested from my perspective because the buildings in question are in my ward. They've been a problem for a number of years, and I will be the first to tell you that I want to see this resolved, and I would like to see the city somehow take ownership of these properties. So we have, some strategic planning that we could get going and revitalize this whole entire area. Because if we don't address the blight, I think the cancer just continues to spread throughout the entire city. And I don't believe any of us want to see that. So I appreciate your effort and allowing us to take part in this, and look forward to working with the group going forward.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We're just a little over time. I don't have anything for executive session, RC. If others do, if anybody wants to enter conversation on that topic more. Okay.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, guys.
No problem.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Hey, Sal,
Yeah,
are you there? Hey, can you have RC, call me? I got an IDA thing.
sure. We'll call you, yep.
Yeah, it's, mowing stuff.
Okay, yeah, he called me.
All right.
We got you.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you know.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
That travels fast.
Yeah. That's great. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Aye.
Mr. Corey seconds.
Oh.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for that, Jeff. I appreciate your time. John, can you send an email to Nathan Fennell, Maureen, whatever her carpenter from the railroad, and suggest that they please take a look in the city of Norwich? They have several crossings that we're getting codes enforcement issues for.
I would also be for the fact that if they can't get down here to do that, if they're
We'd be
willing to
happy to
let
do
us
it.
do it and
Thank you,
build them.
Brian. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, we would be happy to address it with our landscapers, John, if they want us to do that via the IDA. Please just let us know. Something nice to them, okay? Not like a big threat.
Hey, Gina, mow the stinking lawn. Are we still-
Thank you, guys. Yeah, see you tomorrow. Thank you, guys, for your time.
How you doing?
Thanks, everybody.
God bless you.